the missile acceleration that was a little off. And then Jeffrey had a realization.
They tested 2 missiles.
One that didn't work, and then one that did.
The simplest answer is that they launched the big one on the 16th. They filmed it, Kim Jong-un was there, but it blew up. So they couldn't announce it. So they came back a few days later. They launched a different missile that they were pretty sure would work.
In other words, the monster missile launch, it failed. So a week later, Kim filmed a non-monster missile and it would work. And the North Koreans just spliced together the 2 videos. Footage of the monster missile just parading around, and then footage of the successful non-monster missile launched a week later. All the crews taken together were a smoking gun.
It's almost like you went and looked at Kim Jong-un and you asked him, hey, did you eat those brownies? And he says, no, I don't know who did it. Then he's got a chocolate smear all over his face.
It was a significant discovery. If the so-called monster missile was real, true and functional, it would have marked a dangerous turn in the global arms race. But Jeffrey and his team of tech detectives could now say something just as consequential, that it wasn't real. What looked like evidence turned out to be an illusion. Shifting shadows, misleading switches, a story the image was trying to lead you to believe. And in our nuclear age, knowing what isn't true can matter just as much as knowing what is. Because false certainty changes calculations, it raises threat levels, it nudges the world closer to the brink. As we said earlier, this kind of investigation once happened in secret, inside governments. Officials would spot Soviet missiles moving into Cuba, or decades later, nearly 200,000 Russian troops massing around Ukraine's border. The public might hear about it afterward, if at all. But technology has changed that. Today, these investigations happen all over. Which means the next time North Korea wants to project power, the audience isn't just governments. It's all of us. When we come back, tech detectives in Ukraine. As the war there rages on, investigators are searching for answers in another unexpected place. Inside the shattered remains of an attack drone pulled straight from the battlefield. That's after the break. You're listening to Click Here. Stay with us.
Support for this program comes from Recorded Future. In cybersecurity, the biggest risk isn't what can be seen, it's what gets missed. Recorded Future analyzes billions of signals to help organizations stay ahead of threats. Recorded Future. Know what matters? Act first. Good evening. This is KJZZ 91.5, the perfect mix of BBC, NPR, and KJZZ News. You're joining us this Tuesday for Click Here, part of our evening conversations. We're hearing from tech detectives who are following digital clues to hold power to account. There's more just ahead.
KJZZ is supported by The Monroe, opening an old-time Scottsdale for active adults who value wellness, independence, and an engaging lifestyle. The Monroe, live proactively. More at monroeseniorliving.com.
Test your knowledge of the Grand Canyon State with KJZZ's Independent Plus. It's all things Arizona, and we've got a new set of questions out this week. One of them is, what is the oldest Mexican restaurant in Arizona? Try the AZ quiz at play.kjzz.org.
KJZZ thanks business member Roastery at Cave Creek for their generous support of public radio and the local business community. One cup at a time. Learn more at roc2.com.
Thanks for joining us for Click Here on KJZZ 91.5. It's 9:25.
Welcome back. because their job is secret exactly, just because it never occurred to you that someone had to do it. Earlier this year, the Trump administration suggested that Russia was stockpiling weapons. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Most of us wouldn't even know where to start to check that out. But a while back, we met someone whose job is to do exactly that. He doesn't work for satellite photos. He doesn't recruit spies. His specialty is wreckage, specifically scraps from a missile strike. And somehow, those scraps can tell him whether Russia is actually getting stronger or just getting better at looking like it is. Karen Duffin has the story.
When you think about war, you think of total destruction, things getting obliterated, erased. But inside that wreckage, there's often something else. There's evidence. And that's where our tech detective works, inside the rubble of the war in Ukraine.
Harry Delots ran across the country as Ukraine came under a wave of drones and missiles.
Let's start with this morning's drone attack on Kyiv weapon attacks. Well, lots of
Watching the attacks night after night, Damian Splaters began to wonder if he could do something to slow down the attacks using bureaucracy, international sanctions. He wondered if he could shut off the supply of weapons not at the end of the line, but component by component. And this was not a fanciful aspiration because Damian is a weapons investigator, though that's not where he started.
I started as a journalist actually, getting interested in weapons and how they're used and how they get into conflict areas.
That reporting led him to arms dealers and to supply chains, and eventually to conflict armament research, which is where he works now, alongside other tech detectives. People who governments call when they're trying to separate battlefield reality from the battlefield theater. When movies tell stories about the global arms trade, it usually involves black ops weapons dealers, shiny brokers, deals in dim hotel bars.
This is the Hollywood vision, of how it works. Weapon diversion is much more mundane than that.
Instead, weapons investigation, well, it looks something a bit more like this.
And in front of us there was a shattered Redwood 31 that was recovered by Ukrainian forces.
Damian and his team had collected pieces of a downed drone. It had landed beside a building in Kharkiv largely intact, and we asked him to record the team as they investigated. It's this kind of thing that weapons inspectors actually do. They pull fragments like these out of the wreckage of an attack and piece them together to reveal what actually happened, not just on the battlefield, but leading up to it.
So we see on this a little substrate of what is being used, but it's a good example of what's going on.
What he's looking at here is the Shahed 131 drone. You can picture a paper plane made of fiberglass, no bigger than a kayak. This one is